In order for government to be of the people, by the people, and for the people, the politics has to get closer to the people. I'm John McCann, and this is the Closer to the People podcast, a production of North Carolina Black Alliance. You know, I'm not sure we really embrace diversity. I mean, we talk about diversity and how everybody's different and how everybody has their own thoughts about stuff. Yet, think about voting. What's the stereotype when it comes to black people? It's like electoral inertia. You know, regular inertia, Newton's first law of motion, is what? An object at rest tends to stay at rest, right? So electoral inertia is if there's a black candidate, then that candidate will get the black vote, right? I mean, that's the common belief. The stereotypical belief is all black people vote straight Democrat all the way down the ticket. Now, there is some truth to that because that was my daddy's philosophy, rest his soul. Man, the conversations we would have had about this election, let me tell you. But while my daddy represented a particular segment of black voters, I cannot emphasize enough that is not how all black voters vote. All black voters are not moved by the same issues. What gets one black voter over here to the polls is not going to get the black voter over there to show up. You know, there are some black voters for whom issues pertaining to civil rights kind of stuff is a motivating factor. The uplift of black folks, that's what makes them want to go vote. Yet, there are other black voters who will tell you they've pulled themselves up by their own bootstraps and believe they have an equal shot to make it in America and are not interested at all in politicians campaigning along the lines of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Nah, they want candidates who will give them some new straps for their boots. Now, all of that said, here's the unfortunate thing. We have some black people who very much want to vote in the upcoming election, but they ain't planning to. And it's not because they don't like any other candidates. It's not because they're cynical about the political system. Not at all because they don't want to vote. They want to vote. They're not voting because somewhere along the way, they got the idea that for whatever reason, they have some violation from their past that is preventing them from voting. Well, I want you to meet a man who says we got to challenge that. Desmond Meade is his name. I met him at this year's National Association of Black Journalists Convention. He's a 2021 MacArthur Foundation Genius Fellowship recipient. In 2019, he was one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people in the world. Now, mind you, that 2019 list included Michelle Obama, Taylor Swift, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Now, The Rock made the cover of that particular issue of Time, but Desmond Meade will tell you he should have been on the cover because more people can relate to him than the doggone Rock. Desmond Meade is a formerly homeless, justice-involved person who worked and he fought and he advocated and is now president of the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. He's given me some time here in Chicago during NABJ 2024. He was a panelist during a forum called Advancing Racial Justice at the Voting Booth. It was a luncheon. You may hear folks in the background removing dishes from the table. But Brother Desmond, you didn't get to eat lunch, so you know I appreciate you.
Yes, how you doing, Brother John?
Yes, sir. You look real comfortable up there in front of all these journalists. You actually challenged them. You checked them about the importance of not just going to lawyers and policymakers about the issues involving, for example, disenfranchised people, but instead going to the source, the people who are living it. That's the tack we take at North Carolina Black Alliance, getting closer to the people, dig into the importance of that.
Yeah, I mean, we've often heard that those who are closest to the pain are often the ones who are closest to the solution. And so for solution-oriented people or people who want solutions to the issues, then it makes sense that they should come to the people that are experiencing the pain. And so, you know, you lose so much when you go to the talking heads. There's so many different nuances because those people don't live that life, right? But, you know, people like me that's on the ground, man, we every day, I mean, every second, every minute of the day, right, we're experiencing what it feels like to be justice impacted in this country.
You know about North Carolina. You talked about the huge number of folks who believe they have no route to the ballot box. How do they overcome that?
They got to find out. You know, I think that we have experienced what we call a Juneteenth impact, or Juneteenth effect. That Juneteenth, there was a story about when, after the Emancipation Proclamation, that it wasn't until 2 years later that the people who were enslaved in Galveston were finally notified that they were free. And so they were free for 2 years and didn't even know it. And I think we have that same type of effect even in North Carolina, to where there are over 481,000 right, justice impacted people in the state of North Carolina that are eligible to register to vote right now, right? And I'm willing to bet you that a majority of them do not even know it, because people are walking around thinking, oh, because I got in trouble however many years ago that now I can't vote. And that's not true in North Carolina. Organizations like yours and Forward Justice, Second Chance Alliance, they fought hard, man, to expand voting rights to people who've been justice impacted. And so there are over 481,000 to be exact, that now can vote. And it's just about how do we making them aware of it.
Let's stay right there for a minute. Less than 100 days from the November election, you don't subscribe to the idea of voter apathy. You make it sound like everybody really wants to vote.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, you can't just paint everything with a broad brush, But what I can say is that there are a significant number of people who have been denied the enfranchisement or the right to vote. And listen, they have resigned themselves to believing that they'll never be able to vote. But deep down inside, I mean, it's just a natural human instinct to want to be a part of something bigger than yourself, wanting to be a part of a team, wanting to be a part of a group, wanting, to be a part of a club or whatever. And, man, this is about being a part of society, being like a full-fledged American citizen. And nothing speaks more to citizenship than being able to vote.
Listen, you don't need me to tell you there's a whole lot at stake right now for black and brown people. You can stay on top of all of it at ncblackalliance.org. There you'll find all you need to know that's impacting black and brown people across this state. News, information, and insight. It's all right there for you at ncblackalliance.org. This is the Closer to the People podcast, the show that forces you into
deep concentration, cause I'm no comedian.
Let's pick up our conversation with Florida Rights Restoration Coalition President Desmond Meade. He's talking about folks who believe they're unable to vote, but the truth of the matter is they really can. What happens downstream, Brother Desmond, when you disenfranchise people? Does the impact stop with the disenfranchised person only?
Oh, heck no. I could tell you these are like studies that's been conducted, man. Like, let me give a couple examples. In Florida, right? When you have a felony conviction, something on your record, it's difficult to get, to rent or even own a home, right? Because sometimes it's the banks that will discriminate against you. Sometimes it's the mortgage company. It could be even the insurance company that could discriminate against you, right, because you had a previous felony conviction. Let me show you this. The National Realtor Association says that every time you're able to buy a home, that you will pump $122,000 into the economy. In Florida, there are almost 7 million justice-impacted people. If just a third of them were able to buy a home, you know how much money we pumped into the economy? At least $500 billion. That's Florida alone, right? And then when we look at it, that the Florida loses over $256 billion each year of lost earnings because of the barriers to occupational licenses and the barriers to employment of formerly incarcerated or formerly convicted people, right? And so the issues that impact justice impacted people has a direct connection to the issues that everybody is concerned about, and that is number one is the economy, right? That, listen, if I'm able to get a real good paying job, if I'm able to go to school and get a real good paying job, I'm able to pay what? My fair share of taxes. If I'm able to buy a home, I'm able to help stimulate the economy. Who benefits from that? Just me? No, everybody benefits. A rising tide lifts all boats.
All right, and when it comes to voting rights, you don't place that burden on the justice impacted person. You say that responsibility belongs to the state.
I think for the most part, yes. It's the burden is on the state to, number one, create an environment that's conducive to voting, right? That if a state is not encouraging people to participate in the democratic process, then it is anti-democracy. That's a government that is anti-democracy, right? And so even with reentry, and when you talk about rehabilitation and successfully reentering back in the community after serving time, yeah, listen, it is on the state. Let me tell you something. All this conversation that these different states have about public safety, right? Public safety ain't about just funding law enforcement. Hear me out. Because guess what? That's not fighting crime. You know what it is? That's reacting to crime. It's already happened, right? No, we're talking about preventing things from happening. And how you prevent things, which is the best way to fight crime, is to prevent it from happening in the first place. One of the big ways to do it is to reduce the recidivism rate. Right? And so if I'm able to get out and get a job, education, get housing, be able to vote, then chances are least likely that I'm going to reoffend. Right? And then the state don't have to spend 5, 6, 7 times as much money to incarcerate me as they would to educate me. And so it's how we reframing things and understanding, once again, this rising tide lifts all boats thinking that, wait a minute, it's in everybody's best interest that when Johnny or Felicia get out of jail or prison, that they're able to successfully reintegrate because everybody benefits from that. And that's how you reduce crime, right? Not that other thing, because the other thing is just reacting to crime.
All right, grab your phone, put in these key election dates. October 17th, that's when one-stop in-person voting begins. It ends November 2nd at 3 p.m. October 29th, 5 p.m. That's the deadline for absentee ballot request forms. They have to be received by your county board of election by 5 p.m. October 29th. And November 5th, that's election day. Polls are open from 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. That's also the deadline to return those civilian absentee ballots. There's more information about voting, including easy access to registering, when you go to safevoternc.org. That's safevoternc.org. All right, back to our conversation with Desmond Meade. He's president of the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. And I really need you to pay attention here, because if you're not careful, you'll assume that his main deal is to get people to vote a particular way. And I get it, because that sometimes can be the assumption about an organization like North Carolina Black Alliance. But if you're paying attention, you'll understand that we're not out here telling folks for whom to vote. We're just encouraging you to vote. You're a black man. Some folks will assume that you want to encourage people to vote because you want to get all the black people to vote for certain candidates. No. One of the things we're doing at our organization is we're changing our messaging strategy, because we realize black folks aren't a monolith. Black folks vote across the spectrum.
Yeah, no, I'm a strong believer in that. It's sometimes disheartening that when I look at the African American community, we're the only ones that someone could basically look at and assume how we're going to vote. And I think there's something problematic with that, right? And that leaves us out in the cold, because it's nothing to fight for. There's nothing that either side have to fight for anymore, when it's naturally assumed that, we're just going to lockstep and just vote a certain way. So I think that, because you don't see that with any other ethnicity or whatever. And so I tell folks that is an illusion, because the reality is that we're like just anybody else. That there's different trains of thoughts and perspectives and experiences throughout the African American community, right? And to think that we all think alike and act alike and have the same upbringing, that is erroneous, right? And so it is what it is, man. But my thing is that what we fight for is to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to participate in our democracy. If you want to silence, or you don't want to fight for the right of somebody who may have opposing views, then you ain't about democracy. You about that tribalism stuff, man. And just keep it real. I mean, and if you are, just say you are. But don't parade talking about you're about democracy, but you're only focusing on one person, or one type of person to be able to vote.
Brother Desmond, let's put a bow on this with this last question. You like the idea of a convicted felon running for president, and many voters saying they will vote for this guy. Why?
Well, first of all, I don't like the idea of a convicted F-word running for president. I like the idea of a person who's been formally convicted of a felony offense that has served their time being able to run for president.
Get me right.
Okay, and so that's a huge difference. And why I like that is because I think it gives us goals, man. People who've been justice impacted, it gives us goals, knowing that, bro, you don't have to limit yourself just because you made a mistake. That you can overcome that mistake. That you can be a business owner. You can become wealthy. You can be a celebrity. You can be a politician. You could be one of the 100 most influential people in the world.
That was you.
You could be all of that, and now you know that you can also be president of the United States of America.
And it makes sense to me then when you put it in those terms that for folks who would vote for this type of person to run the country, why wouldn't they hire this person in their place of business or let that person vote?
And I think that's what this current election gives us the opportunity to do, is engage in those meaningful conversations. If a person with a felony conviction can move into the White House, then we should remove barriers to safe and affordable housing for people who've been justice impacted. We should be removing barriers to employment and occupational licenses. I mean, come on. You have somebody with a felony conviction that just very well might have the secrets and the nuclear codes and have access to the most sensitive information in the world, right? Which I think is the most important job, right? And the most critical job. And so if we can support someone with a previous felony conviction getting a job like that, then why should we be locked out of any other job? And don't tell me, we can't do law enforcement, because the FBI hires people who are former hackers, right? And at the end of the day, that leaves open the possibility of people being able to have a broader opportunity of employment.
Brother Desmond, you got to go get something to eat. I appreciate this time.
Oh, no, you buying dinner, man. You made me miss lunch.
Brother Desmond did not make me buy dinner, but you would have had to at least leave a tip, because I believe we'll all agree that he gave us some food for thought. This has been the Closer to the People podcast, a production of North Carolina Black Alliance. Let me know what this show can do to get closer to you when you reach out and touch me at john@ncblackalliance.org, and check us out online at ncblackalliance.org. That's ncblackalliance.org. Plenty to chew on there too. Until next time, keep in mind, a government of, by, and for the people has to get closer to the people.